Barbara, welcome to the Blessings Podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today, all the way from beautiful England.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so pleased to be here. You've no idea.
I'm so excited to talk to you and to find out about your life. So, will you please start out by just letting us know who you are? Tell us all about you right now in this moment. What are you up to, and how do you describe yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Barbara Nixon. I'm founder of Smasher and Ceiling. I'm a success and leadership coach. And I've been in this space, the personal development arena, for about 26 years now, which is always quite scary when I say that out loud. But right now, I support leaders and business owners to stop holding themselves back, to stop playing small, to get out of their own way and to get the results that they really want. So it's very much about elevation. It's about confidence. It's about living your truest and fullest potential. So many of my clients, and I speak from experience because I've definitely been there, seen it and worn the t-shirt myself, and capable of so much more. And they're doing a great job and they're creating and doing amazing things. But there's a little bit of something, a whisper deep down inside that says, actually, I'm capable of so much more. And I
Yeah,
know I'm living my life with one foot on the brake pedal. And that's where I come in to support them to do that.
I love it. Yeah. And I think sometimes we don't even realize we're doing that. We know we're not where we want to be, but we're not able to put a finger on exactly what it is that's holding us back.
Yeah.
And we need coaches.
We do. We need so many of coaches. I love the fact that the coaching space is expanding because I don't think there can be enough of us. With 8 billion people on the planet and growing, I think we need to be on every street corner, really, just to supporting people.
Yep.
And you're absolutely right. It's that feeling, isn't it? You can just sense it, that there's more, that you're capable of more, but somewhere along the way, you've gone a little bit off track, or you've fallen into the trap of just holding yourself back.
Yeah. It sounds like you really practice what you preach. You're like embodying
Good.
that.
I hope so.
And so, what about personally? What is your life like?
I am married to Dave. We also run a coffee roasting business, which Dave does. That's his baby, and that's exciting. So I feel as though I've got the best of both worlds, really. And we have a lovely blended family. So together we have 4 children. 3 are in their 20s, and our youngest is coming up to 15. It only seems 2 minutes since she was born, and we have a crazy puppy and we enjoy just life. We're very down to earth. We like to go traveling. We like to eat out. We go to the theatre and just enjoy each other's company. Yeah. And we appreciate each other as well because we're blended. We really appreciate our thing that we built together.
Yeah. I think the blended family represents, I don't know what the percentage is, but it's probably more than half.
Yeah, I agree now. Yes,
Yeah.
it's a lot more popular these days, isn't it? And
Yeah.
I'm proud of that because, yeah, we'll talk about our story in a second, but the fact that we took separate families and joined us together and created something and all the wonderful ups and downs that that brought is just, it's nice when you just look back and go, crikey, built something pretty special.
Yeah. I think it's the real life embodiment of learning and then doing better, because the first go round didn't work out.
Mm.
Take what you've got and make it into something new and better. And I love that.
Absolutely. And we actually did that. We were very pragmatic, I think, about our relationship, just for the two of us. When we got together, we actually sat down and had a conversation of what didn't work previously, what do we want more of, but what can we do to actually make our relationship stronger? And we've held true to that all the way through. We keep reminding ourselves that this is what we want, this is what our relationship means. And I'm going to use the word working at it, and I don't mean that in the literal sense, but making it a priority, making our relationship a priority. We didn't have the luxury that maybe we did the first time of having time in our relationship before kids were born. We came with a package. So it's just about putting our relationship front and center.
We're going to talk about how you did that when we get to that part of your life.
Yeah.
All right. So now, would you please take us back to where you were born and what was little Barbara like?
In Leeds, which is, I live on the suburbs of Leeds now. And so I've not gone a million miles away from where I was born and brought up. And I was in a multicultural family. So my dad's from Leeds and my mum's from Poland. And so I definitely had my foot in both camps. I had a brother and sister. I'm the youngest. My sister's 8 years older. We lived with our maternal grandma as well, who was Polish, spoke very little English, and a dog. And like I said, we had definitely our foot in both camps. We were multicultural through and through. So from Monday to Friday, I went to English school, your normal everyday school that all the other kids went to. And then on Saturday, I went to Polish school, which is then still is a strong Polish community in our area. And my mum was involved with that. She came over from Poland when she was 18. She didn't know a word of English. She learned English from the TV and she met my dad. And obviously, they set up in Leeds where he was from. But she got really immersed in the Polish community and keeping that alive. And so we were immersed in that too. So we spoke Polish at home, Polish to my mum, English to my dad, and Polish to my grandma as well. And then on Saturdays, we went to Polish school where we did every lesson that you'd expect from a normal school. So history, geography, language, everything, did by other children that were the same as us. So all from Polish descent. So second generation Polish children. So we had friends that understood what we were going through. And then we had friends that didn't understand. We were different at school, at the English school, because we couldn't do the things that other kids did on a weekend, like watch Saturday morning TV or go shopping around town or anything. We had something else that we always had to do. It was just part of our life. And this was, at the time, looking back, it was such a gift. It was such a gift. And I'm so proud of it. But at the time, it was a sense of you didn't really belong anywhere. You didn't belong in English school. You didn't belong in Polish school. It was definitely a case of having your foot in both camps. But I really enjoyed the experience of that because Polish school was smaller. It was a mix between an introverted child, but also with extroverted tendencies. So I liked drama and choir and singing and being on stage and all of that. But when it came to being with other kids, I was a bit more quiet and reserved, or I took my time to get to know people. And then I'd be the life and soul of the party. At English school, there's a lot more competition in order to get those parts on stage, in order to be seen and to be noticed. And that's where the Polish school really came into its own for me. It really served because it was smaller and there was less competition. And I say competition, everybody wanted something different. All the kids were interested in different things. So because I liked being on stage and doing singing and playing instruments and all of that, I was given the opportunity to do that because they were they were pleased that somebody was willing to do that. And so I enjoyed that opportunity. So I just really embraced it. So it gave me the tick in the box that I needed that I didn't get from English school.
Interesting. Wow.
Yeah. So then when it was just life. It was just how it wasn't anything unusual for us. It was just how it was. But with a sense of that we're different. We're just
Yeah. I want to ask you one question. What is your earliest memory? What's the first thing you remember?
My earliest memory probably isn't a very exciting one. It's just me being in a buggy with my older brother. My brother is 16 months older than me. So we were brought up quite like twins, if you like. And so he was my mum had a double buggy. So he was next to me and I think she was shopping. So I just remember looking across and seeing him in the buggy. And that's my earliest memory, really. But then sometimes I question, I don't know whether you've had ever thought like this, Mitzi, was like you wonder whether it's a photograph that you're remembering or whether it's an actual event.
Or if someone told you about it, or if you're, I think the earliest memory is very important. I think for different people, because a lot of people have those types of mundane memories, but there's some significance. And when you think about what it really brings to you as a person, that is the thing.
Yeah.
That
I wonder whether, what it is. I've not thought about that. I think it's again sense of belonging.
yeah. Yeah.
That was quite cozy in the buggy and surrounded by people and doing something fun. I say it's fun. Don't remember it being a hardship shopping, but I definitely remember we were in some kind of marketplace. Then my mum must have been.
So it isn't the bit. So now that you're working through it, it wasn't just a picture. You remembered the experience.
Yeah. But then again, I don't know whether I'm actually filling in the gaps. I do think like that sometimes, whether I'm just filling in the gaps or whether it's real. But that's the one that I've got.
That's interesting. But I like what you said about the sense of belonging because you already just talked about your feelings of the sense of belonging. So maybe that's
the joining thread. And that sense of belonging, it's important to so many of us, isn't it? So it's really important to have that. And I always had that. I had that in terms of my family. I had that in terms of just knowing I had structure, a lot of structure in my childhood because there was school 6 days a week. So I knew where I was going. I knew what I was doing. I didn't always like it. Sometimes doing Polish homework on top of English homework was a bit of a bind when you're a kid. That's like what too many things. And there was times where my English friends were off doing something on a Saturday and I wanted to be part of that. But on the whole, it was just an acceptance. This is what it is. And even now, when I've got friends of those that I went to Polish school with now, and we just look back in fondness and go, "Oh, yeah, that was just life. It was just life." And I love the fact how I really admire my mum for keeping that alive as well, because I didn't manage that with my children. And my children don't speak Polish. We still have Polish traditions, like we celebrate Christmas, Polish Christmas and things like that, but they don't speak because I didn't carry that on and because I found it too challenging.
You realize how much of a commitment that is for the parents, for your parents.
Absolutely. I also wonder whether it was easier because, and I've never had this conversation with her, maybe I need to, whether it was easy because she had her mum living there too, so who didn't speak English. So it was just a natural thing that she spoke Polish to her, whether it was just easier or whether if she wasn't there, she'd have just fallen into the trap of speaking English.
Yeah.
Who knows? Who
Yeah.
knows?
Because you needed to know how to speak Polish to have a relationship with your grandmother.
Exactly. Yeah. And to understand what's going on. And again, there were times when my mum just forgot that we all understood. Even now, she forgets. So if you hear her on the phone and she's chatting away, she might say something about, "Oh, well, Barbara's been doing this, that, and the other." And she'll forget that I'm sat in the other room and I can understand every word. But yeah, I think it was a real commitment for her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kudos to your mom.
Yeah, good for her. I manage it, like I said.
Yeah. Yeah. So then what happened as you started to come into like adolescence?
In adolescence, I went to high school. I did okay at high school. I went to college and pursued drama. It was
Mhm.
always a passion for me. I saw the idea of just playing. I wanted to just play. And I did English as well because I loved reading. And I always wanted to be a chat show host. So at some point in my childhood, when I think I was about 14 or 15, the local radio station came to the school to do an event as you get in school. And I fell in love with the radio at that point. And also on the TV around that time, we had a couple of really good chat shows on. There was Terry Wogan, and I don't know whether you'd know it, or Michael Parkinson. They were the prominent chat shows at the time.
Okay.
And I love the fact that they could sit and talk to anyone. And we've spoke briefly about this before we started, that the beauty of having a podcast is this brilliant opportunity to talk to people. And I saw that as a child and thought, that's what I want to do. I want to sit and chat to people on the radio. And so I started looking around and thinking, how do I do that? And there wasn't the internet now. And I didn't have access to people. It's other people who were in that space. My dad was an electrician. My mum did all sorts of jobs to get us by. And so I didn't have the vortex of people to go and ask. I didn't even know how to access them. People at school said, "Oh, you need to be a journalist." Okay, I'll look into journalism. And I then went to college, university to do a degree in journalism. And this is it. Again, now knowing what I know now is probably not the right route at all. But that was the route that I got. That was the route that I took. And I did journalism and psychology and absolutely loved it. And then in my second year, I had a baby. And this was the biggest, best, most beautiful surprise that could happen. I was 19.
Mhm.
I was in a long-term relationship. But yeah, all of a sudden that belonging phase came up again because I didn't belong anywhere again. I was a mum. I was looking after a baby and studying at the same time and thought, crikey, I'm going to have to knuckle down now. Because all partying that I'd done, all the stuff of going out, I wasn't able to do that anymore. So I had to literally knuckle down and start to work, start to study. And this was a really interesting time for me because I started to understand what was my priorities. So what was it that I actually wanted? And we spoke earlier about helping other people. And I realized then I had that whisper. I had that calling that actually you're here for more. And I'm holding myself back now. So I need to actually start doing something about it. Because even though when I say holding myself back, it was easy for me to fall into the trap of just do what you need to do, just look after the baby. People told me to quit uni, people told me to stop. And I thought, no, I have to keep pushing further forward because at some point, this lovely little baby is going to be older. And then what do I do? Do I start again then? And no judgment to people who do, but that wasn't an option for me. And now she's 26. And I look back and I remember vividly, Mitzi, sitting there and thinking, and I saw the pregnancy result. And this feeling washed over me of it's all going to be fine. It's all going to be perfectly fine. Because one day when she's where she is now and I'm where I am now, I'm going to have the time, but I just need to keep going along my path. I can't press pause. I
Yeah.
can't stop. And that was a real motivator for me.
That's crazy that you looked at that situation and thought or asked yourself, "How can I do more? How can I be more?" And a lot of people would look at that and feel very deflated. They would feel like, "Oh my gosh, what am I gonna do now?" You thought, "Wow, this opens up a whole world for me."
Yeah, exactly. I knew that there was no choice. It was happening. And she was such a surprise that I knew she was here for a reason.
Oh,
She was just such a surprise. And I thought, actually, there's nothing, this kid's not going anywhere. I knew it was a girl straight off the bat. And I remember so vividly this feeling washing over me going, everything's perfectly okay. Everything's as it should be.
so
It was,
many mature revelations for a 19-year-old.
yeah. And I don't know where that came from. I don't know where that came from. I don't know whether it was my future self speaking to me. I don't know what was going on, but in that moment, yeah, I just knew it was perfectly okay, that I couldn't stop. So my lecturers at uni and people around me were going, oh, just stop. You don't pursue that. It's not for you. You just have to. And I was like, no. Because one thing I didn't mention was how incredibly determined I am. When I was a kid, because I was the youngest, I don't know where you are whether you've
I'm
got
the oldest.
oh, the oldest. So you come here. I feel for you as an oldest. As a youngest, it's pretty cool being the youngest, especially in my house. I was pretty much left to my own devices. I was actually left to follow what I wanted to do. And but when I was told I couldn't do something, I literally just went, no, watch me. Just
Mm.
watch me. I've had this knowing that I could do it. And this kept popping up for me. So when I was in the situation where I was expecting my baby, I just it was like the world was saying, no, you can't do it. And I was going, hang on a minute, watch me.
Yeah,
Watch me. I can do it because this is going to pay off later. I don't want to come back to this. I'm halfway through. I can just knuckle down, get the job done. And then it's mine. I've done it just for the sake of the short-term pain for long-term gain.
definitely.
So that's where I was. My partner and I at the time, my boyfriend and I, we're still really good friends. We're not together anymore, but we're really good friends. He was in a job and we found a house. We bought a house. We were probably the only young couple on that street, but we bought a house and it was the it needs so much work doing to this house. It was snowed in our kitchen at one point. It was just, but it was home and we made it work. And it was there that we had our second baby. So I had a son when I was just a couple of years older. So I was 23 when I had my son. And then during that time, I knew that I needed a job. I needed some money, right? So I looked around for work that would actually give me a career. So I left journalism and parked that for one side, always having it in the back of my mind that one day I wanted to be a chat show host, one day I wanted to have my own radio station show, and it was always there. But for now, I knew that most immediate problem was I need some cash and I need something with a bit of longevity. So I found myself in the people development department. It's a big team of a retailer, food retailer, which is one of the biggest in the UK at the time. So we've got four big ones. And so that was one of the big four. And this was such a blessing, such a blessing. I was there just doing admin. I say just, I was at the bottom of the rung, walked in, did typing up people's training notes, the other training managers, things. And whilst I was doing that, I was learning because I'm typing it, I'm learning. And I looked around, I thought, I want their job. But one day I want their job. And I also got my calling at that point. So I kept putting my hat in the rings for different things. So if they needed somebody to fill in something, if they needed an extra person, I was the person that would say, "Oh yeah, I'll have a go. I'll do it." And they used to do this big induction, and there was big in their head office. They had a big kind of theatre where all the new managers had come along, and they needed somebody to talk about the history of the company. And there was like 350 people, and I've never spoken in front of that many people. I was absolutely terrified, but I thought I'm going to do it, and it just involved me like reading slides off a screen or anything. Just I didn't really know what I was doing. I was just doing that little bit. And one time I was waiting in the wings whilst the CEO at the time was doing his speech to everybody, which was great. It's so inspirational. And then there's something like, somebody will have helped you get you to where you are today. Now it's your job. It's your job. And in that moment, I had literally, it was like being struck by lightning. I literally had a full of, oh my God, this is what I'm here to do. This is literally what I'm here to do. And I couldn't, it was like 100% knowingness. There
Mm.
was no question. It was like, this is it.
Yeah.
And so that's what I've been doing ever since.
So you're here to help other people to elevate themselves.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that never left me.
And you got
I
that calling at,
was about 22 at the time. I didn't even have my son at that point. I was about
oh,
22.
wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so I worked there for 7 years. I worked my way up to be a training manager, and I learned all areas of business, and I was part of the team to launch e-learning when e-learning was just in like nothingness at the time, which was really exciting. And I did all sorts of big projects and managed big budgets and all the everything that you'd imagine. And then 7 years on, I got made redundant. And on the day I got made redundant, now at this point, we fast forward a little bit in my personal life. At this point, me and my boyfriend and my partner had split up. We'd gone our separate ways. It was a natural thing for us to do. And like I said, we're still really good friends now. So it was okay. But it left me being a single mum. So I was a single mum with two kids. And I'd moved house at this point as well, with the house that didn't snow in the kitchen, which is always a bonus. But now I got made redundant, and I remember the day that it happened. And we got told on the day, and I was so pleased. And I remember people saying to me, "What is wrong with you? What on earth is going on with you?" And I said, "This is the gift I've been waiting for." I said, "Because I'd never leave.
Yeah.
I needed somebody to shove me out of the door because it
Right.
was safe. Because I was a single mom, it was a safe salary. I was studying for my second degree in the evening, and it was safe.
Right.
And I walked out of that building when it was the last time, like I was leaving the Big Brother house. I was just like
Yeah.
so pleased. And I didn't have anything to go to. And it was summertime. And I went to pick my kids up from school. And I never really got the opportunity to do that. My mum was the person that went and dropped the kids off at school and did the school run and things because I had to work. So I turned up at school, and the headmistress was pottering around, and she says, "We never see you. What are you doing here?" And I said, "I've been made redundant."
Mm.
And she said, "Are you free for the next couple of months?" And I went, "Yeah." And she says, "Fancy just filling in as a teaching assistant for 2 months. You get to hang out with kids, do all the school trips were at this time of year. It was all in the summertime. Do you fancy it?" And I went, "Yeah, I'd love to. Yes, please." And it
Wow.
wasn't a paid position. It was just let's fill in some time and just take a bit of a break position. And I toyed with the idea of being a teacher, but yeah, it wasn't for me. But I had the best time.
Wow. You have an uncanny ability to be able to see that the universe is working for you.
Yeah. And looking back with this story, yes, but it's not always been obvious to me. Sometimes, yeah, I forget.
Okay.
Sometimes I forget. But yeah, in that moment, it was just such a gift, such a gift. And I had the summer off. I went and did this thing with the schools, which was an absolute joy. I saw the kids more. And we just played for a couple of months and always knowing that everything's going to be okay. Everything's going to be okay. And during that time, again, in my personal life, a lot of things happened that year. So my dad passed away that year.
Mm.
It was a big eye opener because he'd been ill, but he got better. And then one day he just had a heart attack and he died, literally, suddenly. And it was the day of my last exam for my second degree. And I
Oh,
sat on the stairs and I thought, I'm going to go and do it because otherwise I'm going to have to do it again. And I don't need that. I'm just going to go get the job done and then come home. Anyway, but this period was such a realization that life's so temporary.
yeah.
It's just a short holiday that we're on.
Yes.
So I just, and it was a bit of a nudge, really. But also, just before he died, I met my husband. So I had a bit of a bittersweet month, really. So I met my husband to be, we didn't know at the time that we were going to get married, but yeah, we met. And then my dad passed away weeks after.
How old were you then?
Not long. I was 27, I think, 27, 28, in my mid to late 20s. And so then that's when we got together. And so he was single dad with a little boy. I was a single mom with two kids. My eldest was 7 at the time, I think. Daniel, my youngest, was 4, I think. And then he had a 5-year-old. And yeah, we got together and it was quite quick. It was probably just under a year that we both sold our houses or were planning to move in with each other, or there was progress being made of what we were going to do together. And that was when we literally sat down, as we said at the beginning, sat down and said, do we want our relationship to be like?
Yeah.
Because what's different? And we were very pragmatic about it. We did I don't know whether you've ever done it or heard of it, the love languages questionnaire.
Yes.
Did that, both of us. And we went, okay, this is what we need. And we do that quite regularly, actually. I know it sounds a bit strange, but we've done it a few times over the years just to keep ourselves on track. But we also sat down and said, this is what I didn't get from our relationship. It wasn't anything bad about our previous relationships. I'm not saying anything horrible about those people. It was just, it ended. So the fact that it ended meant something was missing. So what was it that we didn't get from that we now want and that we now need? And can the other person provide that? Is that something the other person wants? So because there were children involved, we didn't want them to go through another situation. We needed it to be right. So we sat down and went, this is what I want. Is that something that you want too? Or is that something that's way off your radar? You're not interested in that. And luckily we were all right. But having that really honest conversation of this is what I need. And one of those things was we agreed and we committed to keeping our relationship a priority. So we never stopped dating. And even now we date. We've been married, I think it was 16 years. We celebrated last December. And we still date every week. And it's something that we do without it. Sometimes our dates are just sitting at home and just having a meal around the table, but sometimes we go out. But that's just our time. And that's been so important. Yeah, it's been really important for us.
How did you meet your husband?
Oh, so we
What's the
met.
story?
Yeah, so we met on a boozy weekend sailing around the Isle of Wight. Through mutual friends, we didn't know each other. So the mutual friends, we both got invited on this weekend sailing around the Isle of Wight. And we walked into the pub before you get on your boat. And we met and I said, hi, how are you doing? And it's all right. And where do you work? And he named the company where I worked. And I said, I work there. I said, are you in a store? And he went, no, I work at the head office. And I went, I work at the head office. Now, I just want to bear in mind that the head office is in Leeds. We were both now in Southampton, where we were talking, where we met. So that's like at the opposite end of the country. Couldn't get further apart without getting your feet wet.
Okay.
And I says, I work in the head office. And I said, what floor are you on? And he says, I'm on the second floor. And I says, I'm on the second floor. And I said, where are you? Anyway, it turned out that there was just a door between us. That all the time we'd not noticed each other. But we were in relationships before then. Our paths had never crossed. We didn't work on the same projects. We just weren't on each other's radar at all. Nothing happened on this trip. We just met each other. That was it. And then on the Monday when we got back to work, he opened the door and he went, literally, and he went, oh yeah, okay. So all this time he was right in front of me and I didn't know.
My God, that is crazy. But you
Yeah.
had to travel. It's about 10 hours from one.
Oh yeah. We had to travel to the place. But the interesting thing here is that I started to manifest my partner beforehand. So I remember sitting down and said, okay, I'm ready for a new relationship. But I wasn't really looking. I was open to it, but I wasn't hunting, or I wasn't looking, going out dating or anything. And so I started to prepare for it, and I wrote down the list of characteristics that I wanted from my perfect person. And I also started making space for him in the house, which was really interesting. So we sorted out a bedside cabinet. Bear in mind, I'd been on my own, so there wasn't a bedside cabinet on that side, the wrong side of the bed. So I sorted that out, and I started training myself to sleep on my side of the bed. And I made some room in the wardrobe, and I started parking in a certain place so that his car would have space. And then, sure enough, he
Oh my
turned
God.
up. And it
That
was
gives me goosebumps.
yeah,
I love that. And
yeah,
you started it out by saying something really interesting I want to hit on. You said you were open, but not hunting.
yes.
And
I
that's the
was,
thing.
I was so open. I was just open to just, and can't explain it any other way. I wasn't out looking for a relationship. Everything in my life at that point was fine. I'd actually got to know myself in the time that I'd been single. Just to rewind a little bit, me and my previous partner, we'd got together when I was 17. And then we'd had two babies. And so it was a rush. And so I'd jumped a step. And so when I was on my own with the kids, I got to know myself so deeply. And it wasn't an easy thing to do because I was grieving my previous relationship and I was learning how to be a single mom and all the pressures and juggling that comes with, but also really giving myself the opportunity to go, okay, what do I want? And one of my big defining moments, Mitzi, was when I went into a paint shop and I wanted to redecorate my bedroom. And I was stood in front of all the paint with my two little ones next to me. And I stood in front of the paint and I went, what color should I paint it? And my daughter said, whatever color you want. And I was like, I want to say, holy shizzle, right? I've never had that before. For such a long time in a relationship, you're compromising or you're talking about things. It was never my decision. And I went, oh, wow, what do I want? And that was the first time I'd ever really looked at that. And any behind where typical Barbara thing, I picked fluorescent pink, painted the whole colour fluorescent pink, and then painted it a different colour 2 weeks later when I got it out of my system. I remember feeling, wow, this is interesting now. What do I want? And that was the year for it. Who am I? Who am I? And so when I was open for this relationship, because I was okay, everything was actually really all right. I didn't feel the need to fill that gap immediately and just start looking. Just wanted to see what I was just open to seeing what would happen. And I remember my sister saying to me, the person, your ideal person will be right under your nose, you'll see. And sure enough, yeah, through a door.
That is a crazy story.
Yeah. And he fit all of those characteristics as well that I'd written down.
What were the characteristics?
Everybody else, I don't know exactly. I remember just realizing because what we did, we wrote them down and then we burnt it. And I went, I'm just releasing it. I don't want to be looking and going, oh, somebody got that, somebody got it. I didn't want that checklist. I just wanted to know that I'd thought of it. So I can't even tell you. Probably good with kids and kind and tidy or something. It'll be something and nothing. But yeah, he must have fit because he's still at
That can teach us so much. It's reminding me of did you ever see the movie Practical Magic? That movie, Sandra Bullock's character writes a list of this impossible to find man, one brown eye, one blue eye, and other characteristics, something about pancakes. And she thinks she does this list because she thinks it's impossible. This man
yeah.
doesn't exist. And then he comes into her life.
Sure enough, yes, there it is. He walks in, and the thing that swung it for him, and we still talk about it today, is that he bought me grass. So I'll tell you this story because it's quite cute and lovely, and it really did swing it for him, to be honest. Was one day my eldest was at brownie camp, and so I'd taken my son to the beach, and we'd had a day out, and we'd arranged to meet Dave, my husband, who wasn't then, and his son to bowling later on that day, like that evening. But we were all sticky and messy from the beach, as you can imagine. So we got home and I said, run in and we'll get changed sorted and then we'll go out. So as we ran past, I ran past the gate in my garden Now, my garden was a beautiful closed garden. It was perfect for the kids. And it was all closed in with a 6-foot wall all around it, apart from a gate. So you can't get in from the outside. And there was a bit of it that I wanted grass, but I'd not been able to do it. And it was just a chore. And it was one of those things in the house where I wanted to change. And there was gravel on it. And as I ran past this gate, a flash of green struck me. And I stepped back and I put my head on the gate, and he'd landscaped my garden and he'd done it in green. And so he'd broken in on his day off. He'd gone and thought, I'm going to go and get grass. And he didn't just order grass. He went and broke in and after he climbed over the wall and did it all just for a surprise. And I thought, oh, that's the person I want. And I still talk about that now. It says, you're here because you bought me grass. And it was just the effort that he took.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's so special.
Yeah. That really says a lot about him.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, he's still around, which is great. But what happened next? So we got married and steps just start building our life, really. I started a job. I started to be a people development manager for another food retailer, which I worked for 5 years. And again, that was just such a joy, such a joy. I enjoyed every second of that experience. It came along at the right time. It wasn't that long after I got made redundant. It was just perfect.
First of all, okay, so I have to say two things.
Uh-huh.
One, the English have a beautiful way of saying that you get fired. That's a euphemism. And also, how do you always see the positive?
How do I always see the positive? I think it's easier from where I'm sat now because I'm at a different vantage point. At the time, there was no choice but to see the positive. I'm trying to dissect how I feel it, how I was feeling.
It feels like it's almost innate. I don't
Really?
know. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
It was kind of, I don't need to worry about this because I know that I'm going where I should be going.
Yeah.
And I've always had this knowing, this trust. I remember when I was
The old soul kind of thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
I don't even know. My mum used to talk about it all the time. When I was a kid, I remember I used to go for auditions at school and things. And I I remember going for this audition to be one of the brothers of Joseph and his Technicolor Dreamcoat, right? And it was a big school production. And I desperately wanted to be a brother. And I went home and my mum, bless her, was trying to keep me grounded. And she kept saying, oh, but don't be upset if you don't get it. And there'll be other parts and you can get this part. And I said, I don't know why you're saying that because I know. And she says, oh, has somebody told you? And I went, no, but I know that I'm going to get it. And I just know. And sure enough, the next day I came home and I told you, I just know. And that's just one example. And I remember changing my school when I was about 10 or 11. I decided when we moved house and we went to this school and I didn't like it. And we drove past on the bus at this other school, which looked like, you know, like when you drive past a building and the sun just catches it right. And it was just like, oh. And I thought, I don't want to go to that school. And I didn't know anything about that school. It was just a perfect snapshot in that moment. So I arranged for me to move the schools. And I remember saying to my mum, I'm going to this school now. I've arranged it. What do you mean? Because you just need to come and sign some forms. So I moved my school. And it was just, again, I have this ability to just nudge myself back on the right path when I need to.
How
But
old were you when you decided to change your school?
oh, about 11.
Oh my gosh. And you made those arrangements all by yourself?
I don't even know what was going on in my head. I just saw this school and even now,
And they listened to you? You called the office and you said, I want to come to your school. I'm 11.
I don't even know what happened in that moment, but sure enough, no word of a lie. Somehow I managed to change my school and my mum came with me and I said, yeah, this is my school now. I just need this, please. I've signed this form. And she was like, oh, yeah. And it was out of the way. I had to walk there. And she says, you're going to have to make your own way and all the rest of it. It didn't bother me. I had the best time ever in those 3 years. I just loved it.
Wow. Oh
I know it's just crazy. I can't even tell you because even now I say it out loud to my kids or something and they go, how? I just don't know. What happened? What somehow the stars aligned. But so when I got this job, it was just ace. It was just 5 years of, I loved it. And I had my youngest daughter, baby at the time, and I went on maternity leave. And this was the first time I'd ever had proper maternity leave. So if you remember, I was at uni, so I'd not had any time off. And then when I had my son, I think maternity leave was about 12 or 16 weeks, I think, which is tiny moment in time,
Yeah.
a blink of time. And so the things had progressed a lot. And so in terms of maternity leave, and so I could have up to a year off. And I never had a year off. I think I had about 10 months off in the end. And so I had all that time being a mum and doing the school run and meeting new friends with babies, the cake, and just enjoying myself for a whole lovely period of time. And when it was time to go back to work, I realized that it wasn't what I wanted anymore. And even though I love my job and I love the people and everything on paper was perfect, I changed and I wanted more. I wanted to be the mum who did the school run. I
Mm.
wanted to create my own destiny. I didn't want to be at a desk or be told what to do till at 8 o'clock in the morning. I would just be more. And so I resigned and I had a bit of an inkling of a plan, but I didn't have any clients or anything. It was just, I know that this is what I want to do now. So not long after I resigned, and it was the recession. It's probably a good idea to say that because it was probably it was 2010. And we were a little bit further behind than you guys in terms of the downturn. And things were rough at that point. There was shops shutting all over the place and it's scaremongering on the news and all of that. And I worked in food that people need. I had a fairly secure as jobs go. So I left and we went on holiday. We went for a week, so we rented a cottage somewhere. And every day on holiday at 2 o'clock in the morning or about early hours, I woke up in the morning going, and David would go, "What's up? What's up?" And I said, "I've had this dream that I've left my really good job and I've no idea what to do." And he went, "Yeah, you have, but you're going to be all right." And after a few days of doing that, he says, "You know what? You need to just get started. You need to get started." So I started my training consultancy. So that was my first business. And my boss, she recruited me to this last job actually, and she turned into a colleague and then she turned into a friend. And she'd left work a little bit before me. And I phoned her up and I said, "Oh, I'm skipping an important bit of the story here." So I left work, started a training consultancy, and then realized that I'd gone from an open plan office with lots of different people to being on my own in a back bedroom, and the loneliness hit me like a train. And I couldn't cope with that loneliness. I thought, no one's bounced ideas off me, but what am I doing sat here on my own? So I phoned my friend up and I said, "I know you're not doing anything. I've started this. What do you reckon? Do you want to be my business partner?" And she said, "Give me 24 hours to think about it," or whatever. And she phoned me not long after and said, "Yeah, I'm in." And for the next 5 years, we had an absolute ball. So we did leadership development programs for different businesses, predominantly manufacturing. We went all over. We went all over Europe. We went to the States. We just had an absolute ball and we grew this business. And then after 5 years, I realized that I'd made another job for myself. And I thought, oh, gee, this isn't what I want. This isn't
Mm.
what I want. It's been fun. And luckily, she was at that same place. I squeezed it for all it was worth and loved every second of it. And even now, she's one of my closest friends. But we knew that we were done.
Yeah.
And again, that was such a blessing. And it was a hard decision to make because I loved what we'd created and I loved working together. But I knew that it was done.
Yeah.
So we went our separate ways and I started my coaching business in 2015. This was when I had the year of yes. So in that time, I realized over Christmas, it was probably this time of the year actually, I realized that because I'd gone from one thing to another, I lost my intuition. That was the best way that I can describe it. I
Mm.
couldn't hear myself anymore. It was just, there was something missing in the busyness and there was all sorts going on. So I was bringing up a little baby and I'm a teenager now in the house and all sorts of other things happening. And I thought, oh, I need to get that back. I miss it. I want that back. So I declared to whoever was listening that I was going to have a year of yes. And whatever would come my way, it was 2015, whether that would, if it would support my journey in terms of me getting back, the goal was to get back my intuition, then I was a yes for it. And I'd just be open to whatever happened. Let's just see what happened. And oh, do you know what? Just the best things happened. That I went to things that I never have thought to do. That maybe it's standard practice now, but back then it was very new to me, if not to other people. So I went and got my chakra cleansed, but because out of nowhere. So I didn't go hunting for things again. So a friend would phone up and say, "Oh, somebody I know's wanting, she's got a free place. Do you want it?" Or they'd gift me things and say, "I've got this spare place for a 6-week Kundalini yoga retreat. Do you want to go?" And I'm like, "Okay." Or there's what else happened? I went and had my Akashic records read. There was all sorts of other things, loads of bits and pieces like that. Where
But were you always interested in that sort of thing, the spiritual aspect?
yeah, but it was
Because you talked about a lot of practical things. I have it on my list to ask you because you talked about in college your minor was psychology. So you
so I
obviously have an interest in like consciousness, and so
yeah.
now this is the first you're talking about this part of your
Spiritual,
life.
yeah, absolutely. So it was the first time I'd always been interested in mindset. I'd always been interested in psychology. I read autobiographies. Bear in mind, I wanted to be a chat show host, so that was the closest I could get. So I read autobiographies right from being little. And so I was always very interested in people. And so it was always there. I had a knowing of other things happening. And I never did anything. My mum used to like reading tarot cards when I was little, and she'd go into fortune telling. That was it.
Okay.
So this was because I was open and because things were gifted to me, it was a yes. And
Yeah.
so this is my introduction to things.
Yeah.
And some of them stayed with me and some of them it was a no. I'm not a yoga person. I like Pilates. So when I did the yoga thing, I was like, oh, I've enjoyed that, but it's not for me. Yeah.
So
And
in your year, you declared an openness to having a year of yes. And then things started coming into your life. And these were the sort of spiritual things. And then
yeah, there was
you made decisions about which things felt like they were a good fit for you and which didn't.
absolutely.
And that enabled you to do what was your goal, which is get in touch with your intuition. That's
Absolutely.
crazy. That is insane.
Yeah. There were other things where
You were given a school. You were just,
absolutely I was.
the universe
And
put you into a school to do exactly what you set out to do.
exactly. And in that time, I also gave myself permission to do things that I just was interested in, take myself out on a date. Like when I used to travel for work, one of my biggest challenges was going out to restaurants and eating alone. I didn't like that. I felt lonely. And because I've always been a big family and stuff, it didn't feel comfortable. And so I gave myself permission to take myself out for lunch and just eat lunch and just be a be. That's probably the best way of describing it. Or take myself to an art gallery for the day. And I started dating myself.
I love it.
And yeah, and on it was every Friday. And I brought it back not long ago, actually, where I had my Fridays where I date myself. And it was permission that I gave myself to just do whatever. And some days I'd take myself to lunch and in a nice hotel lobby, or it'd be whatever I'd fancy. And I remember my sister phoning me up one Friday morning. She says, "Oh, do you want to do something?" I said, "No, it's my day today." She went, "Oh, yeah, I've forgotten. Fair enough." She went, "Where are you heading?" "I don't know, but I'll know when I get there." And sometimes I just got in the car and went and found myself somewhere and then went, "Oh, this is what I'm doing today." And it was just such a joy.
Yeah.
And with the whole purpose of finding myself again.
Ugh, I
Yes.
love that. I've heard that before, and I just love that. Date yourself. And I think you're making me think. I used to do more of that myself. I would go into New York City and I would go have lunch in the Four Seasons Hotel just to have that experience because you can afford to have lunch at the Four Seasons if you want.
It. This is
It's
it.
just lunch.
Absolutely. You've hit on something because at first there was so much of noise in my mind of I can't do that.
Yep.
And then it was, hang on, why not pay for lunch? I can go and
Course.
have a coffee somewhere
It's
if
a
I
little bit more expensive than the corner cafe, but not that much.
and you're all right. You can manage it.
You can do it. Right.
You do it. And it's
And you can feel like $1,000,000 while you're doing it.
yeah.
That's the key.
And that is the key. And meet the most incredible people.
Absolutely.
You do meet the best things, just most incredible people, especially when you're on your own and you're just open to chatting.
And it
It
creates fun, a sense of fun.
really does.
Because that's what it's all about. And that's interesting because you have had a lifetime of manifesting things. And I don't want to sound cliche with the word manifesting, but it's the truth. It is the God's honest truth that you do bring these things into your life.
Yeah.
And it has to do with your mindset and your
Yeah.
feeling.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can't explain any of it. I can't explain any of it, really. It's just that it happened.
It's a lot.
Uh, it is. This is it. It's a law. And you're right. Just having, giving yourself time to date yourself is a gift, such a gift that you can give to yourself. So, yeah, 2015 was a year of just learning, really. And at the same time, I was starting my business. So, clients came along and I started to be nudged in a certain direction. And that's when I created the Smasher and Ceiling concept, if you like,
Mhm.
because all that time there'd been times where I'd held myself back and played small and done just enough. And I'd spotted it in other people as well. And it was a not on my watch kind of scenario.
Yeah.
And what also happened in 2015, which was a game changer for me, was that I started suffering from stage fright hugely.
Interesting.
Yeah. So this was, bear in mind, in the career that I was in, I was used to being in front of people. I'd run workshops and I'd spoken in front of people. And that wasn't ever a problem. I'd be on stage. I told you since I was little. Never a problem. Never got nervous. And now all of a sudden, I got horrendous stage fright. And I used to get phoned up and say, "Oh, can you do this speaking engagement, speaking event?" And normally I'd say, "Oh, yeah, no problem." And then one time I went, I'm actually scared to say yeah. I stopped myself and I thought, I've got a choice here. I'm still on the phone. And I stopped myself and I thought, I've got a choice here. I can either say no, I can't do it, but it's always going to be no. And I need to find something else to do. But this is my job. This is what I'm here to do. Or I can use this as a gift, as a learning opportunity for me and put the date back. And in that time, go through this, whatever coming my way. And I said, yes, I can do it. And it was like the hardest yes of my life. Like, yes. And I gave them a date. They weren't bothered about the date. It was further on in the year. And when I put the phone down, I thought, okay, now I've got my next challenge. And I started working on overcoming this stage fright. And it was so hard, but so, again, such a gift because I literally went back to basics. I sat there and went, I'm going to be so honest with what I need. And I went right back to basics. So I was open about what to people. And I said, this is what I need. I need opportunities to speak smaller. I joined Toastmasters. I went right back to basics. And I literally went to Toastmasters, which was just a joy. If anybody's thinking of struggling, just
I've
go.
been thinking about that. It's funny you bring that up.
I loved it.
That's come up a bunch of times in my experience. Interesting.
So I went
Going back to basics.
I went right back to basics. And I thought, I'm not going to be too I'm not going to be thinking, this is too advanced for me. I should be further on. I'm going to go, right, no, this is a situation. I'm here to do it. But I knew that if I went back to basics, I could support other people as well because I've now been through it.
So why do you think this happened to you that you got this sudden stage fright?
I've got a theory. I don't know for sure, but I think because previously I'd always had a company name to hide behind.
Mm.
So I'd had two big companies that I worked for. So I wasn't Barbara, I was an employee of these companies.
Mhm.
And then I started my training consultancy again. I wasn't Barbara, I was part of this brand. And now all of a sudden I was on my own. And it was like, oh, and I think that's what it was. There's nowhere to hide now.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing that I can use. That's the only thing that's ever come up for me. So I went to Toastmasters on my first day. It was such a lovely group and I was so fortunate. And I said, this is my situation and I'm petrified. And they literally just wrapped their arms around me and gave me opportunities to speak. And we worked on that. I also looked for opportunities to do smaller events. What I did, I created a big experiment for myself.
Mm.
So in that experiment, there was no success or failure. It was just I was logging my results. How did this go? What did I feel like? What symptoms did I get? what worked for me, what didn't work for me. And it was all very gentle, but it was the only way that I could do it. And around that time as well, I had a notebook that I started many years ago that I had at the side of my bed and some bedside drawer somewhere that I used to write down things that I really wanted to do. Yeah. And sometime along over the years, I've written down I want to do stand up. At least
Oh, yeah.
a stand up course came along in Leeds, and I thought this is the perfect opportunity for me to be so terrified. Tick that off, but also be so terrified. But there's no failure attached to it. So it didn't matter whether I bombed or whether I cried or if anything happened, because it was just play.
Yeah.
Play.
Just play.
So I went along to this course and I did, and then the graduation came where you had to do a stand up gig in front of people, real life people.
Okay.
And I've never felt so frightened because bear in mind, I was still going through this thing.
Yeah.
I was so petrified. I was sat there and my husband was there and he'd invited some friends because he knew that was the only way.
Yeah.
And I sat there thinking, I'm going to be that scene in Pitch Perfect where she throws up all over this thing now, and I'm going to be on like YouTube forever and a day, and it's just going to be awful. And all of that was going on in my head. And at the time, I thought, hang on, remember, this is an experiment. How do you feel? What's going on now? So my heart was beating out of its chest, and I thought, okay, is your heart beating out of its chest? And actually, no, it's just thumping a bit faster. You cope with it. Yeah, it's okay. I can't grasp my breath. Okay, what can you do? I can slow my breathing down. Okay, fine, let's do that. I can't think straight. And in that moment, when I thought, I went, what can I grasp hold of in terms of thought? I looked around the room and I thought, all these people are just here for fun. They're just here for fun. They're not thinking about me. I'm thinking about me.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, they're just here for fun. And around that time, I'll just switch steams a little bit, if that's all right. Around that time, I was doing a big webinar, and webinars were very new back then. Doing a webinar, and there was about 100 people coming onto this webinar. So I was doing it for a company. And I was petrified. I thought, oh my God, webinar coming up. I was just so terrified. And I did the only thing that I knew how to do. I walked into my teenage daughter's bedroom, the first baby that I had, and she was sat just doodling on a journal. And I said, you've got to help me. I said, I'm about to do this webinar. I don't know what I'm going to do. It's going to be awful. I'm having a meltdown. What do I do? And she was the only person in the house. And she didn't even look up from her journal, Mitzi. And she said, you're not Madonna, get over yourself. And in that moment, it was the slap down that I needed because I realized that they weren't coming to see me. It was nothing about me. They were
Right.
just giving up their lunch time to learn something.
Yep.
They were just learning something.
Yeah.
And so I learned to be of service. Thought it could have been me, it could have been you, it could have been the next door neighbor. Anybody could be delivering that. I wasn't important enough to be, they weren't paying like Adele price tickets to see me.
Yeah.
They were just learning something. So how could I be of service? So when I was doing this stand-up gig, I was sat there and I looked around and saw people. It was set about the same time. I think that what it happened just before this. And I went, they're just here for fun.
Yeah.
Give them a break, mate. You're just here for fun. Stop making about you. And I went on stage and I actually said, my husband was quite front, and I looked at him and I went, and I took the mic and I said, can you believe that I've paid to do this? And I said this to him. But it was in my head, really.
Yeah.
And then realized that actually I was okay. And I just did the thing and it was best fun. But in that moment, it was the two things side by side of it's all about service.
Yeah.
Nothing's ever about me. It's not about us being visible. It's just about somebody somewhere's waiting to hear what you've got to say. What
Mm.
can you do for that person? And it was such a gift for me, both of those things side by side. So, yeah, it was an absolute joy. But I look back on that time and I still get nervous when I do things, but I'm pleased about that because it's a reminder of service. So
Mm.
I get nervous, but not terrified. Before I was like, oh, wow. Whereas now I just get, oh, I'm doing something different. But I
Right.
just reminded that actually I'm just here to help somebody out right now. It could be anybody.
Yes. Because if you're in that position, that means that there is someone there who needs what you have because the universe put that person there to learn something.
Yes, exactly. And we've all done that. I've been to countless events and webinars where I've just gone, I've not even looked at the name and I've gone, oh, I want to learn about that.
Yep.
And that
Oh,
just,
definitely.
exactly.
Doesn't
So it's,
matter. It's the message and the experience. Very profound.
yes. And it was such a gift. At the time, I had to choose for it to be a gift. And I remember doing that. It didn't feel fun. It felt like all the fear had come to just play out all at once. But I had to choose for it to be an experiment and for it to be a gift. And I'm so pleased of it because now you can overcome it. Really can overcome it. That pretty much brings us full day, really. Other than
Yeah.
that, you can be growing my business and enjoying life. And other bits and pieces have happened along the way, but that's been my journey, really.
Have you done any other stand-up?
No,
No,
I
just
didn't
that
feel
one
the
time.
need. It's never part of the plan. Other people have said to me, "Oh, do you not fancy doing it again?" But it wasn't. That wasn't the plan. The plan was for that experiment, and that's just
Very interesting. So you have now devoted your life to helping other people to feel comfortable with being visible and to, I love the smash your own ceiling.
yeah.
So do you think people realize that they have a ceiling?
Yeah, I think we do. I think we can feel it. And the ceiling can be anything. It doesn't have to be a holding yourself back kind of thing. It can be sometimes it lack of boundaries. Sometimes it's just getting in your own way. It can be, I've got into the habit of doing this thing and I can't get out of it. I call them these lovingly success blocks. So things that just come along to block your way and they can take all sorts of different guises. So it could be just having excuses or procrastinating or just being busy on the small stuff rather than doing the things that will move the needle. There's all sorts of different things that we can do that will just hold us back.
I know that you talk about in your practice the ways that people get in their own way. What would you say are the top things that people do to get in their own way?
Oh, there's so many. So one of them is excuses. Excuses. We can make so many excuses for ourselves. And one of the things that I say is that if it's easy to make an excuse. The thing is, excuses can be confused with facts. We rationalize it and go, oh, we believe our own excuses.
You do.
But the thing is that if I said, okay, Mitzi, I'm going to drop $1 million in your lap right now, would you do the thing that you've got an excuse for? I've asked so many people that question when I go on stage or when I'm doing workshops. And there's everybody pretty much 9 times out of 10. I think I've had one person in all that time that said no, that they said yes. So it means that you're actually got an excuse because the lack of time or the lack of money or that you're not ready or you haven't got a certificate or whatever it might be is your excuse has suddenly vanished because you're moving now.
Yeah.
And we confuse where we are with the actual facts. So it's about looking further than that. It's about looking over the bridge, over to the other side and going, this is where I'm going. And that's where the $1 million is that I've just given you,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
The other side. All you need
Yeah.
to do is get over that bridge. And bridge is just the journey. And you literally just found a way. You're going to do it because you want that million. You
Right.
want $1 million. And when we get rid of those excuses, all of a sudden we start to take action. Other thing is that we can get into the habit of excuses. And sometimes our habits then become an extension of our personality. So we go, oh, I'm disorganized, or I'm always late, or I've not got any confidence. And we hide behind that. And it's just an excuse, but in a different guise. And we just use it as an extension of our personality. But in actual fact, no, you're not disorganized. You're just choosing to be right now. We can change that and you don't have to be.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably the main one is excuses, but also habits play a massive part. If you think about day, it's littered from the beginning to the end with habits. And we get used to doing everything in a certain way. And if we really analyzed it, how much of that is actually getting you the results that you want?
You're making me think everybody has the same 24 hours in the day. And I think about that because your day will be filled with things.
Yes.
And so I love what you're saying about choosing the things that will move the needle.
It's making that choice, that conscious choice. And I don't actually think that everybody's got the same 24 hours
Okay.
because all people have got different responsibilities. I remember when I was a single mum, I didn't have the same 24 hours as my next door neighbor who was single and could do what they wanted. I had things that I had to do, and some people are carers, and some people are jobs.
So you have 24 hours. They're not the same for everyone.
They're
Yes.
not exactly.
That's
We've
true.
not got the same amount of time. We've got different responsibilities,
Yeah.
but also we all have the same choice. So in those snippets, those pockets of time, whether you've got an hour or somebody's got two, it doesn't matter. What are you choosing to do in that? Yeah, and that's the difference because when you really look at your day, I don't know how many times you press snooze in the morning and how many times you scroll on social media or whatever it is that you choose. How much of that is you being busy or how much of that is actually productive? If you look at why you're not getting the results,
Yeah.
you need to be really honest and think, what have you actually done to get them? Really, honestly,
Yeah.
what have you actually done to get them? And that's quite a hard conversation sometimes. It's hard for us to look at, and I do it for myself as well. I'm human like the rest of us. I'll look at my day and go, "Oh, I've not done anything today." Okay, what? Because you filled your day. What
Yes.
have you filled it with? Because that you need to scrap.
Yes.
And you
Yes.
just need about making those choices of actually, is it this or is it that?
Yeah.
Yeah, and which is actually going to make the biggest difference for me?
Yeah. Because you can say to yourself, I can't fit this in because I don't have time. But then you discover as you start to focus more on those intentional activities that you did fit it in,
Yeah.
that you do have the time,
You have time. Yeah.
the
And
choice.
we've all got the choice. We've
Yeah.
all got the choice. And sometimes other things get in the way, like second guessing ourselves and the mindset stuff and self doubt and going around in circles a little bit. And that's okay. 'Cause we just have to unpack that and sort that out. But it's about, again, just coming back to a place of honesty.
Yeah.
What am I doing?
Yeah. Yeah. And not everybody's ready to have that conversation with themselves.
No, that you're ready when you're ready. And I think it's when you reach that enough moment,
Yeah.
that's why people tend to find me when they've reached that point of, I don't want to have that year again. I don't want to feel like that again. I don't want to, whatever the end of that sentence is for people. I've got a yearning. I know this is what I want for my life. How do we get it?
How many people do you think actually go for it and want to reach their potential?
Oh, what a question. I don't know. How many people? But you know what? I
Not
think
an actual number, but
not a lot because look at the explosion of the self development
yeah.
space. And now I remember when I was a kid and walk into a bookshop and there were like a couple of books there. And now it's like everywhere. Yeah. When I was younger, there was like the 1 Minute Manager and Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. The word like the OGs. And now you go and there's like stacks and stacks of books. So I think because of that, because the market, I think so many people, and because we've got social media and there's motivation at your fingertips. How awesome is it to be alive? There's literally motivation and people at your fingertips that will talk through the interwebs and tell you amazing things that you would have had to either pay for or queue for or search for or read about. We
Right.
just have that. So I think lots of that. I think the numbers a lot. I think the numbers high.
Yeah. So more people are realizing that it's possible
Yes. Yeah.
because of that. And that's very true. That's an interesting point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. What do you think is the biggest problem in the world that's preventing people from being more uplifted, making a difference in the world?
What's the biggest problem? I think, again, that's a very wide question, which I love. I think the fact that we're conditioned or hardwired, I don't know what the right word is here, to reach for the lowest branch that we can see. I think
To-
it's exposure to things.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think if we know about things, and that's where internet is so powerful, right? So if we're exposed to things, then we know about them, that we can reach for them, we can start to move that way. But I also think education has a massive problem. So certainly here in the UK, so I'm just talking from my experience as a mum, it's still standard, it's still mediocre, still the same. And
Yeah.
I'd like to have seen the mindset stuff that we talk about being in there. And I'd like to see things like meditation and daily rituals and actually creating and cultivating a success mindset in schools and having people from all walks of life, like motivational speakers to come into school. So I think education has a huge part of it.
Yeah.
And I don't think that should stop. So that should work all the way through like networking as well. And I appreciate networking. There are speakers that come and do that. But I think it should be a continuation. You mentioned about creating a school, the university created a school earlier on. I think that school should be continuous, and it's
Yeah.
something that we cultivate as
Yes.
people.
It is there if you realize that you're in it.
Yes, yes, it is, and that's where coaches come in, right? This is what
Yeah.
we're the part that we play.
Yeah. It's so true. So I want to ask you about the lessons that you've learned in your life, but I have one more big question that I love to ask people to see what your answer is. What is the most important thing?
What is the most important thing? Probably love, right? Love. And I could say so many things, but love is the thread. And that's love for what you're doing, love for yourself, being able to look yourself in the mirror and just appreciate the brilliance that you are, love of the people around you, love of the situations that you're in. I think it's definitely love all the way through.
Yeah, I agree. And your whole life seems to have been defined by the ability to be immersed in that feeling of love and positivity and seeing the reasons why things are happening and being able to have the mindset to see that these are things happening for you. They're positive things. They're gifts. You use the word gifts a lot.
Yeah.
So what have
And
been the biggest gifts then in your life, the blessings?
probably things that I didn't appreciate at the time. Things like there's the obvious ones, as in having my children, absolutely, having my relationship, having my family, having the upbringing. Without a doubt, those are the most important gifts. But if I think of the things that I wasn't expecting or I wouldn't have chosen, so if there was a big encyclopedia or manual menu, if you like, of experiences that I wouldn't have put on there, they've taught me the most, I think. Things like being a single mom and getting laid off from work and having my stage fright experience, building my businesses. Cranky, there's no other personal development journey like it, I think, than being a business owner. Yeah, I think those are really my gifts.
It's so interesting the way life gives you these blessings disguised as other things. And what about the lessons? What do you think are the biggest lessons that you've learned in your life or things that can help other people as well?
Number one is probably trust yourself. I have this unwavering belief, and I've tested it out so many times, that we all secretly know what we want. It's
Mm.
just trusting ourselves to own it and say it out loud. And that's the thing. I think number one, always trust yourself. That voice that you've got, and wherever it appears in your body, whether it's in your stomach or for me, it's always in my gut. But if it's in just the back of your mind, or you can just get a tingling, whatever that is for you, trust it, because it's literally you calling. It's you telling yourself what it is that you want. So trust
Yes.
yourself above
Yeah.
anything else. You secretly know deep down inside what it is that's right for you, what it is that you want, what it is that, yeah, it's just about taking the time and tuning yourself in and giving yourself permission to listen. And the second thing is date yourself. We talked about that, and that's been such an absolute joy this in my lifetime. It's something I do now. It's just again, give yourself permission. Maybe that's the tip, really. Give yourself permission to have time with yourself and not always be too busy for yourself, because it's so easy to get busy on stuff. Yeah, I do all the time. We're busy people. So just give yourself, just carve out even a morning or an hour that's just for you. And you'll really reap the rewards.
Because what you get out of that is the feeling. You get the feeling that comes with doing something really wonderful that
Yeah.
you love to do.
Yeah. That's it.
Yeah,
And I think the third, if I can sneak in a third, is that all right?
absolutely.
It's follow your joy. Follow your joy. You won't go far wrong if you just, even if it's the hobbies. I've had the best experiences in my hobbies in my spare time of just saying yes to the strangest of things. And you just never know. Just follow that joy and see, just allow yourself to follow those breadcrumbs and see what happens.
I love that, following the breadcrumbs. Sometimes I call it following the brain crumbs because you'll
Right.
get ideas. One thing will give you an idea for something else and then follow that trail.
Yeah.
I love that. Oh my gosh. And I just want to ask you, you talked about how you discovered your purpose very early on in your early 20s because that is a time when we have a shift in mindset, but a lot of people don't experience that early. And a lot of people never even discover their purpose or don't even think about it, really. But when you do discover your purpose, do you think you are obligated by it in some way?
No, and I think it can change. I think you've got a decision. I want to use the word purpose loosely because
Mhm.
a purpose doesn't have to be like a calling or a job that you have to do. It can just be a way to show up. I can do my purpose working in a cafe. I can support and help people grow working as a bus driver. I can do it anywhere. I think it's not to hold it too tightly, but use it as a way of life that this is part of your values, it's part of how you show up and in the world.
Yeah,
And don't worry too much about it because most of the time you're doing it anyway. If
that's
we're
right. That is what I say. That is what happens with these conversations is that your life is leaving you clues the whole time.
exactly, you are doing it anyway.
You're
And it's
already doing it. Right.
already do. And it's those conversations that you're having with your friends when they're blocking. It's the times when you reach out to people when you feel as though you need to. It's the jobs that you apply for. It's the things that you actually are searching for and reaching for. So if you were to draw a graph, it'd probably point you into what your purpose, and again, let's use that word loosely, but what the common thread is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so don't worry too much about it. Just keep going. Just keep doing what you're doing.
Just keep going. That's another one. That's another lesson, I think. Keep going. Just keep going.
Yeah.
Life has a way of nudging you along
Really do.
and forcing you to keep going, even when
Yeah.
you don't want to. I
Yeah.
love that. Oh my goodness. Wow. So, is there anything else that you just want to say that you feel called to let us know about
It's
before
just
we?
an absolute joy just taking this trip down memory lane and having it reflected back to me. So I appreciate you, Mitzi. I appreciate this time that we've had together. It's been a lovely experience for me.
Thank you. You have given us so much to contemplate and so many wonderful gifts from you to everyone who's going to listen to this because there's so many nuggets of wisdom in here. Thank you. Oh my gosh. I love it.